Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled "Neighbor Trespassed on My Land and Called the Cops to Kick Me Out of My Own Property." This is a story from a few years ago, and it is easily one of my favorite party stories to tell when we get into the subject of entitled douchebags, especially neighbor douchebags. About 7 years ago, when I was still a teenager, my dad and I had to deal with the most entitled neighbor ever. Let me start off by explaining that my parents owned a very large plot of land, some for farming and some was just unoccupied but was kept mowed and cleared of bush. All in all, I think that the property was about 112 acres. Every so often, my father would have to patrol the property, looking for evidence of trespassing and dumping, which seemed to happen quite often. Eventually, he was able to fence and gate off the entire 112 acres, but that did not seem to stop people from cutting through or filling in the ditches that surrounded the land just so they could have access to my family's property. My father put no trespassing signs everywhere, and yet it did not change anything. There was always evidence of someone coming onto our land, even seeing tire marks from ATVs and quad bikes. Another important part of the story is that my dad was a big gun buff. He had been since he was a kid, always collecting different kinds, whether it is rifles, pistols, shotguns, you name it. Because of that, I became interested in learning about guns too. We would spend hours working on target practice out in the fields, and once I got older, that turned into hunting. As the different hunting seasons would come about, my father and I would venture deep into the property and post up, watching for whatever critters we were hunting at the time. Sometimes we would even bring our tent and make it a weekend camping excursion. These memories are the ones that I hold dear to my heart, especially now that my father has passed away. And nothing makes me smile more than remembering when my dad shamed our stupid entitled neighbor who thought he had some rights to our land and was a total jerk to us and our dog. So, to set the scene, it is early fall, my father's favorite season, because of the crisp weather and the smell of bug piss in the air. At least that is what he always used to say. My mom liked to tell him it was gross. It's a normal camping and hunting trip like we have taken in the years previously. Me, Dad, and our chocolate Labrador Bo drove far out onto our property, maybe about 1.5 miles in, nestled into this clearing that Dad had specifically made for our tent and fire. We spent the morning setting up our guns and tree stands when we thought we heard an engine out in the distance. Dad could not hear it, so we just carried on with our preparations. After being in our positions for a while, me in the tree stand and Dad in his camouflage cover with Bo next to him, we finally spotted a deer. It's a mature buck with at least 10 points, one that I would be proud to make my first trophy. Let me say that I don't hunt anymore, by the way, but in the state I lived in, there was an abundance of deer, especially on our property. I took aim and fired, shooting it in the shoulder but still missing my mark. So it ran and I shot again. We followed its blood trail for about 20 yards before we found him. The buck was still alive, so my dad ended its suffering swiftly with another gunshot. I felt really badly about this, another reason why I did not turn hunting into a habit. Anyway, only a few minutes later, we could hear the engine sound from earlier quickly approaching. This time Dad heard it too. It was not too long before 2 ATVs pulled up, one with a kid younger than me and another one with who I assumed was his dad. The man was in his late 40s and had a big old beer gut and wore an entire getup of camouflage. His white face was flushed red as he sped up to us aggressively and threw his four-wheeler into park. His approach was a little abrasive and unexpected, startling our dog, who began barking at him. My father approached in a friendly manner, but Bo kept barking. The man on the ATV got off and started screaming at our dog to "shut the F up." Dad shooed the dog back and started speaking with the a-hole. Well, speaking is a little untrue. More like the man immediately jumped down my dad's throat and was accusing him of endangering his son with our gunfire. At first I was very confused because it is our land. And then I realized that this dude is just a jackass. When my father told him that we were shooting into an area that had a dense hillside to the south of it, the guy only laughed and said that it did not matter. He even sounded so smug as to say that we were shooting illegally. I spoke up and said that it was deer season and we had a license, and the guy cut me off, telling me to shut my mouth and let the adults handle the conversation. He told my father, "This is private property and you cannot just come onto it and shoot wherever and whatever you like." Dad was not going to tolerate this man's attitude for much longer, as his neck was turning the red color it always does when he is about to flip his lid. Dad asks, "Did you see the no trespassing signs when you came onto this land?" The man only scoffed and said that he'd been using the land for months and had even created his own little access path onto it. "Did you know that this is our land and not yours?" He then smugly said that he knows the people who own the land and that he has permission to use it, and he is going to call them and the police for our illegal shooting, child endangerment and trespassing. My father welcomed the call to the police and patiently waited for them to arrive. In the meantime, Dad called Mom and had her bring the deed with our property surveyor paperwork before we loaded up the deer into the back of our truck. The stupid entitled dude started taunting my father and I from his seat on his ATV. "Haha, can't wait for the cops to give me that deer you illegally killed." And then he starts telling his son that this is why you don't take crap from assholes like these guys. What a giant turd of a man, and I feel sorry for that kid too. After about 45 minutes, the cops finally arrived. They genuinely seemed annoyed about having to come all the way out to our place and quickly diverted their annoyance to the correct party. The officer spoke with us first, allowing my father to show him the property paperwork and proof of ownership, even complimenting me on my first deer. 10-point buck for a 15-year-old? That's dang good, kid, he said and patted me on the shoulder. He told my dad and I to sit tight and said that he would have the situation handled quickly. We could hear the a-hole telling the officer about how he knows the person who owns this land and that he had permission to use it. He even went as far as to say that he had cut down trees and filled in a ditch so that he could have an easier route onto our land. When the officer asked him if he knew the name of the person, he had suddenly forgot. Right, because they own the land. The cop pointed at us from over his shoulder, earning a panicked look from the douchebag on the ATV. "Did you come onto the property even after seeing the trespassing signs?" It was pretty obvious from that point that he was in the hot seat. To make the entire situation even better, the officer found other things to charge the man for on top of trespassing. When he asked if the vehicles were registered, the man said no because he thought that they were using private property where that was unnecessary. Needless to say, the dude left with his tail between his legs. Him and his son had to push their ATVs back to their vehicle, and he had to pay the trespassing fines and the fines for not having their vehicles registered. Dad shouted to them as we drove by, "Hey, I would give you a lift, but the deer in my truck bed is taking up all the room." And yeah, ripe stars, I gotta say, for me it is almost unimaginable how someone can be so entitled to not only trespass on someone else's private property, but then also have the audacity to get the owner, or at least try to get the owner of the property, kicked out of their own land and maybe in trouble with the police. I guess some entitled people just think that the world belongs to them. Either way, if you enjoy the stories about entitled people, then I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we are on our way to 100,000 subscribers. The next one is titled, "Stop Parking Like That." This just happened at my workplace. All names changed. For backstory, a co-worker of mine, Amber, has been dating a bylaw officer called Greg in the city where I live. When he takes his lunch break, he usually comes by to chat her up if she's on shift. Other than him, we don't get a lot of law enforcement out to our area of town very often. It is a normal day. I am gathering up shopping carts in the parking lot at our store. The area directly in front of the store is designated as a fire zone. There is yellow markings painted on the road surface denoting where the zone is, coupled with signs all along our storefront saying that it is a fire zone and there is to be no parking or even stopping within it, and it is well away from any legitimate parking spots. Despite the markings though and the signs, people still like to park there. Usually just to grab a few things. Sometimes one person will park there and their partner will hop out to go shopping. Every time I am out there grabbing buggies, I always walk over and tell them, hey look, this is a fire zone. If bylaw swings by, you could get fined or towed. Most people look at me like they expect me to pull a tow truck out of my back pockets and nail them right then and there. I usually have to follow up with, I'm just letting you know in case you didn't know. If you wanna park there, I'm not going to stop you, but it is your own fault if bylaw shows up. This is usually enough for most people to thank me for my diligence, park there anyway, and go inside. The odd person will snark back at me along the lines of, what, do you think I'm blind? I know where I parked. And I just have to apologize over and over until they walk away. Today though was different. This beat-up old Ford comes in hard and almost squeals to a stop in the fire zone. I just happen to be passing by with carts, thankfully on the sidewalk. I don't want to imagine what might have happened otherwise, and I get his attention. He is easily north of 65 and probably enjoying his 70s. He's got a Friar Tuck haircut and whatever the male equivalent of resting witch face is. I can already tell, even as I am opening my mouth, that this is probably a bad idea. It was just force of habit at this point. Excuse me, sir, this is a fire zone you have parked in. If bylaw comes by while you're inside, you could get fined or towed. He scowls at me. So? Bylaw never shows up. Who the F do you think you are? The effing grocery police? I am already adopting the customer service apology face and saying, no sir, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I was just... But he cuts me off. You're goddamn right. You're not telling me what to do. I've been driving a car since you were a disappointing rut for your mother on prom night. I will park any damn well where I damn well please, and you're going to do jack about it. Me trying again. Sir, I was only trying to tell... He cuts me off again. He gets right in my face with a finger. You don't tell me goddamn anything. I tell you what's what, and you get the F out of my way and go do your worthless minimum wage BS job for the rest of your miserable worthless life. All I can reply with is, yes sir. He puffs out his chest, glares at me and goes inside. I look up as he is leaving, and who do I spot pulling in but Greg. I see his bylaw vehicle, I look at the truck, I smile. I practically sprint to him. He sees me coming and says, hey OP, how's your day? Terrible, I reply, but hopefully about to get a whole lot better. Why is that? I point to the beat-up Ford. This old a-hole just tore me a new one for trying to tell him that he's parked in a fire zone. You mind giving him some karma? Greg grins. He loves sticking it to bullies. I can do that. He grabs his ticket book and heads over. It was hilarious. He started in on writing the ticket while I went about my business. The old guy takes his sweet time getting back out of the store, and he shows up just in time to see Greg slip the ticket under his wiper. I was inside the store at the time, so I did not get to hear it all, but the old guy was screaming and cursing at the top of his lungs as Greg, who was responding to him in a composed manner, calmly explained the ticket process. He spoke to the guy for a few minutes and then went inside to see Amber. On his way in, I pass him by and say, whatever you drink, let me know and I'll have a case of it waiting for you in the cooler next week. He just laughed, shook his head and went inside. It was not much, just a $150 fine, but it felt so good. The next one is titled, The Karen of All Karens. Hey, this is a story from one of my mother's friends. She lives in a private residential complex. This is something similar to an HOA in America, but not exactly. This is a number of houses possibly built on the land of a single person with a walled enclosure, and that can be accessed through a main gate. The people who buy houses there usually have to pay some money monthly to the residential complex administration. I live in one of these, but we don't pay anything because there is no such organization in the complex where I live because everybody hates each other and cannot organize. These residential complexes are quite common in my country. My mom has a friend who lives in a private residential complex in my city. She told us once the story about a Karen who was the president of the complex administration. This Karen would constantly harass the homeowners for the monthly payments and everybody hated her for that. The thing is that this Karen would give specific instructions to the security guards on the main gate to not let in any owner who has a delay in payment. And yes, she expects the owners to pay on time or would not let them get in their homes. Also, she would not let anyone in after 10 PM, no matter if they are up to the payment or not. Sounds like a quality neighborhood, guys. Anyway, my mom's friend has a daughter in school, and one day the daughter came back from school, but when she got to the main gate, there was Karen and she would not let the child in because the mom had a 1-day delay on the payment. The child ended up going to her grandma's house until the mom could pick her up and take her home. One day everybody was tired of Karen, so they gathered and took the entire gate down, leaving it free for anyone to come in. Also, they were preparing to sue Karen. I don't know what happened next, but I think my mom's friend moved out somewhere else even since. And the next one is titled Horrible Mother-in-Law. Context: in-laws have a vacation home an hour and a half away from all of our primary residences. This home is divided into 2 sections, their home below and ours is on the 2nd floor. My husband is one of 2 children and we pay all expenses, maintenance of boat, electricity, water, taxes, etc. But on to the story. I have been sick for a week. I fell asleep on the outside couch because I needed to sleep sitting up. It was horrible trying to sleep sitting up, so I was exhausted. Around 4 AM I woke up and, missing my bed, went back to my room to snuggle with my husband. Of course, I had a little bit of a tough time getting to sleep. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, I was knocked out. This bliss was temporary. Less than 4 hours later, I am startled to see my mother-in-law laughing like a sneaky child at Christmas to wake my husband up with caresses. I stared at her shocked, and her explanation was that she had a bad dream about him. She had heard me at 4 AM and knew I had gone to my room to sleep, but felt entitled enough to wake me up from 4 hours of sleep. In our own apartment, in our bedroom. I told my husband that I was beyond pissed. I told him that we need to pay more rental-wise so that she does not feel entitled to pull this crap off. Her obsession with my husband is real. You would think after 35 years she would get over not having her baby at her beck and call. It is a known joke amongst everyone, including the younger sibling, who is resentful, rightfully so. Husband thinks she had a moment of insanity and I need to let it go. I think we need to pay rental more so she does not feel entitled since she owns the house. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.